Welcome to our presentation here today, The Secret to Getting Organized. Hint, it starts with an organized mind. My name is Alicia Cohen, and I'm the owner and creator of Alicia Cohen Designs. Through Alicia Cohen Designs, I teach intentional planning, effective productivity, and important mindset shifts to busy moms so that they can create calmer lives that are focused on what matters most. Just a smidge about me personally. I'm a happily married wife. My husband and I have been married for over 11 years. We have 3 awesome children, and I'm also a homeschooling mom. Some things I like to do for fun include crocheting, going for long or short family walks with my husband and kids, and listening to nonfiction audiobooks. So let me tell you for a moment about what I've noticed that inspired today's presentation. So there are 3 common struggles when it comes to planning and productivity that I hear from people who come my way. Those 3 struggles are knowing where to start, feeling overwhelmed, and being able to follow through. So if you yourself resonate with any of these struggles, then you are in the right place, because today, if you don't know where to start, I'm going to cover where I recommend starting. If you're feeling overwhelmed, while there are a lot of things that can cause overwhelm, one common thing I find that helps to calm overwhelm is having a clear, concrete plan, and we're going to get into that today. And then if you have trouble with follow-through, there can be a bit to unpack when it comes to follow-through, but today's presentation will also start to help with this struggle, because in order to improve follow-through, which by the way is a buildable, learnable skill and not something where you've either got it or you don't. So to work on follow through and being consistent, you first need the plan, the system to follow through on. And again, that's what I'll be covering today. So now let me tell you about our agenda for this presentation. So as you know from the title of this presentation, today we're going to talk about how to get organized in your mind, perhaps even first before you get organized in your household. So before we dive in, let's go over the agenda for this presentation. In this presentation, we are going to cover what is an organized mind, the common big problem that I see when it comes to having an organized mind, the 3 steps to creating an organized mind, and action steps that you can start working on today. Okay, so to start, when it comes to getting organized in our homes, maybe you want to declutter and organize a closet, or declutter and organize your basement, or a particular room. Any of these projects, which are great projects, they will only get you so far with feeling settled in your life, where you're living each day feeling successful and calm and confident and in control, if you don't first have an organized mind. Previously, in my own life, I've pretty much always been super good at organizing things, closets, shelves, drawers, rooms, whatever. I could take a space and make it neat and tidy and organized. I also pretty much have always had an organized calendar and an organized to-do list, but for how organized I was, I still felt so overwhelmed. And I was so baffled by this. So what did I do? I just tried harder to be more organized, and I just attempted to move faster and be more productive to just try to get everything done. But of course, this never worked. I would just end each day feeling frustrated, exhausted, frazzled, and just really discouraged. I felt like I just kept failing over and over, and I just didn't know what I was doing wrong. Well, what I was doing wrong was I didn't have the right system. Sure, I had plenty of systems. We all do, whether we realize it or not. And some of our systems work better than others, but for me, the systems I was attempting to use to help myself were not helping. Now, eventually, after a lot of researching and learning and trying to solve this problem for myself, I did figure out a solution, and I did find an effective system, and that's part of what I'm sharing with you today. So, let's move on, and I'll tell you about what I mean by an organized mind and why this matters. So first, from our agenda, what is an organized mind? What do I mean by this? An organized mind has 2 parts. There's what it looks like, as in what it is, and then there's also the other part of the definition of how it leaves us feeling. So let's start with this second part, the feeling part, first. When we have an organized mind, we are able to approach and run our days feeling good, feeling successful. Having an organized mind leaves us feeling calm, in control, effective, confident. These are the benefits, and this is what we are going after. So what is an organized mind? What does it look like? An organized mind is a mind that is quiet and focused and knows what to do next. An organized mind knows its job and what is expected of it. So, what is the job of an organized mind? Before we get into that, let's talk about the problem that I see when people don't have an organized mind, and that problem is mind swirl. So let's talk about what our brains look like real quick with mind swirl versus what our brains look like without mind swirl, which is the kind of mind that I'm referring to that is organized. So, mind swirl. Mind swirl is the state of being in our lives where our minds are just going and just relentlessly seem to not leave us alone. So this would be where our minds are just so full of tasks, projects, reminders. Oh, I need to go buy this. Oh, we ran out of that. I need to do this. I need to tell her that. I need to remind the kids of this. I need to ask my boss that. Just a laundry list of things that swirl around in our heads, things we don't want to forget, chores we need to do, people we want to see, places we want to travel, hobbies we want to do, all of it. Just all of the stuff that makes up our lives, and especially the logistics of our lives. When we have that in our heads swirling around, taking up real estate in our precious brains, that is mind swirl. From my own life, I like to tell the story of how I used to feel like a living ping pong ball. At the time, as a stay-at-home mom of 2 little ones, a toddler and an infant, there were a ton of things that I wanted and needed to get done on any given day. And up to my eyeballs in mind swirl, I would just ping pong around the house, bouncing from room to room and task to task, and oftentimes completely forgetting about the mile-long list of things that I quote-unquote should be doing or intended to do that day. At this point in my life, many days what got my attention was really just a game of chance. I'd walk into a room to do one task and immediately get derailed by 3 other tasks that suddenly needed to get done that I had forgotten about, but was now reminded of by walking into that room. It was as if my entire house was one giant to-do list, and everything seemed urgent. And of course, there was always some fire to put out, which would inevitably derail my day further. So, this used to be my life, one giant, overwhelming, ineffective mind swirl. And so, what I propose and what I see and also what I have experienced in my own life is that when we learn how to quiet the mind swirl and how to deal with it effectively, and we get a solid, effective system in place, then we feel better and can also do better in our lives. So, let's talk about what our life looks like without mind swirl, and back to this point about what our brains look like without mind swirl. So when we don't have mind swirl going on, our lives are calm and focused, we feel confident and effective, and we know what our next steps are. We are not constantly ruminating on these thoughts and holding the information so desperately in our heads, trying to keep track of it all, and or doing that ping pong ball thing like I was just talking about. Instead, through the use of a system, which I will tell you more about in a little bit, we are able to calm our brains and finally hit that off switch. I know for myself, when I used to be stuck in that living ping pong ball mind swirl place, it felt so relentless. I would just say, please, could I just hit the off switch, even for 5 minutes, to just get a break from this thing? It's so exhausting. Like, I can't ever seem to get away and have my brain be quiet, have my thoughts just leave me alone for a minute. They just kept going and going. And like I said, I would jokingly say, hey, can someone please tell me where the off switch is for my brain just so I can get a break for 5 minutes? So all of this ping pong ball living, the where's the off switch thing, all of that is the mind swirl and what we are seeking to get away from. And again, the way we do that is through having a solid, effective system that supports calming the mind swirl. So now, more on what our brains look like without the mind swirl. So they're calm, effective, in control, focused, and they are able to do what our precious brains are designed for, which is not being a glorified to-do list. Our brains are not meant to be containers. I like to talk about this. Our brains are not meant to be containers. If you are having container brain, which is a result of what we do as part of the mind swirl, that's where you're holding all this information in your brain, like it's some sort of glorified basket or some sort of overqualified piece of paper or task management app. Our brains are not meant to be these baskets or information keeping apps or pieces of paper filled with to-dos. Our brains are meant for doing the cool stuff like analyzing, problem solving, coming up with ideas, creating these sorts of tasks. This is what our brains are designed to do. Before, when I mentioned our brain's job, this here is what I meant. This is the job, the analyzing, the problem solving and creating and so on. We need to give our brains a break from being container brains. We need to give our brains a different way to be so they don't have to be containers anymore. No more container brains. Instead, we create the container in the system outside of our brains. The container does the grunt work, and our brains do the cool, special, higher level work. So now that we've talked about mind swirl and container brain, and the problem with container brain, I want you to take a little mantra with you moving forward. And that mantra is, my brain is not a container. So this mantra is going to be useful as we get into now what is good to do instead of living a life of mind swirl, where we're using our brains as containers. And perhaps you can start to see here from all we've talked about so far that when we have the mind swirl going on, it doesn't really matter how many closets we organize, how many rooms we organize, how many drawers we organize, if we don't first have a system for how we are managing and handling all the incoming information that comes at us all day long, every day. If we don't first have an effective way of handling that, then no matter how organized our physical space is, if our mental space is not organized first, we won't fully get the sigh of relief, the easy breathing, the ease in life, the relaxed way of being in the world that we are looking for, if we don't first get our minds organized. So now, let's talk about what that looks like and how we do that. So we have 3 steps when it comes to handling the mind swirl and getting our minds organized. Those steps are awareness, setup, and implementation. So the first step, awareness. You're actually right in the middle of that step now, and you're doing it right now. So just awareness of the problem, awareness of why it doesn't work, and what is beneficial to seek to do instead. So by listening to this presentation, you're getting aware, starting to think about this, and that's a good thing. And now you're taking this mantra, my brain is not a container, and moving forward into the setup and the implementation steps. So taking this mantra with us, let's look at the setup of what we do here. So in order to have a brain that is not functioning as a container, then something else needs to function as the container. So whether you think of this as an external brain, a second brain, however you want to think of it, all of that information that you were previously and that you are currently holding in your mind needs to start to live somewhere else. And this is what I call a capture system. This is the place where we keep the information that would ordinarily have just been kept in our minds. We keep it comprehensively in a system. So in a capture system, we have 2 important elements that make up an effective capture system. We have all the little spots where we collect and capture the thoughts, tasks, reminders, projects, etc. that are in our minds. And then we have the final gathering spot where all these bits of collected information reside. And really another name for this is our to-do list management system. So the collection and capturing of these thoughts is a part of the process of this system. And then at the end of the day, the place where all of these thoughts go is what I call our to-do list management system. So let's talk about where to capture. So in our day-to-day lives, as we go around, we want to be able to have places to put this information. So I recommend having 1 digital spot on your phone and then a couple key physical spots. So on your phone, use whatever note-taking app you prefer. Personally, I use Microsoft To Do, which is a free app and free software. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. This is just a product that I personally use and like and teach as a part of my system, but you can use whatever notes app that you like that you have. Then after that, you're going to take a look at some physical places. So to do this, you want to look around your life, your daily life, and think about where are you most often where thoughts are coming to you? Maybe it's in your kitchen, maybe at your desk, maybe in the shower, maybe in the car. Wherever these places are, you want to have intentional key spots where you write things down. So for example, in my own life, I have a command center in the kitchen, which is just a spot on the wall where I have this unit, this bulletin board type thing that's hanging on our wall in the kitchen, and it has a blackboard and it has a little corkboard part to it and it has some pockets. And when I think of something that I can't get into my digital system first, because that's really the best place to be capturing stuff in the digital system, because at the end of the day, we want to put everything into that digital spot. But sometimes it's just easier to write it down on the blackboard in the kitchen if I'm in the kitchen. So I go to my command center, write it down, and boom, there you go, captured. Another spot I have is this little thing called Aquanotes. It's a little pad of paper that I got. I bought it off of Amazon, Aquanotes. And it's this little pad that can go in the shower so that when I'm in the shower and inevitably I have a thought that comes up, again, boom, I can write it down right then and there, and I don't have it lingering in my mind. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking all the information, the stuff that's coming into my mind throughout the day, and I'm getting it down, either written on paper or written in my app. Other capture things I like are having a pad of sticky notes in my purse and at my desk and in the car. So whatever it is for you, whether it's having a whiteboard, a blackboard, sticky notes, a pad of paper, aqua notes, whatever it is, I want you to think about maybe 3 or 4 key places that you tend to be in your day-to-day life where you would want to be able to write things down in a quick, just jot it down sort of way. But even better, like I said, you would just put it right into whatever digital app you chose for your phone. So if you can, just put that thought right into your phone, even better. But if not, sometimes it's just faster and easier to put it on something written. Okay, so back to our setup here again. We talked about the capture system, and now let's talk about the to-do list management system part of the setup. So the to-do list management system is the main hub for all of the pieces of the capture system. This is really the tool that we use for getting our minds organized, that we use so we stop using our brains as containers. So again, you can think of this like an external brain or a second brain or your assistant brain, whatever label works for you. But here, for the to-do list management part of this system, there are 3 main things that you will need to do to make this effective. This is something that is best done daily, and it really should take you little time to maintain once it's up and running. So your first step is you will gather up all of your capture spots. So the sticky notes, the whiteboard, the pad of paper, whatever it is that you picked, you will want to collect this information and then do step 2 here, which is to consolidate it. So you're going to take all of the tasks and reminders and thoughts and whatnot and put them all together in one place. Again, personally, I use and I also teach using Microsoft To Do, but whatever digital spot you're using, whatever app you like, all the captured bits need to end up there. This is why I recommend having one digital capture spot and capturing as much as you can there from the get-go, because it just saves you that much more time later when you're gathering and consolidating in step 2. Then, once you have everything gathered and consolidated into your one digital location, you will then sort your items by prioritization. Now, the details of really effectively doing steps 2 and 3 here are beyond the scope of this presentation today, but don't fret because I have a free workshop for you, which I'll tell you about at the end of this presentation here, which does walk you through steps 2 and 3 in greater detail. So just hang tight for that if that sounds like something that interests you, but otherwise for now, just know that your aim here is to consolidate the information in your one digital spot as we discussed here for step 2, and then prioritize it within that digital location based on the level of importance for each item. And now our final step, implementation of our 3 main steps here: awareness, setup, and implementation. So once you're pursuing the awareness of no longer having your brain function as a container, and then you're using the capture system and the to-do list management system of the setup step, then your final step of beating mind swirl and having an organized mind is implementing what I call an ongoing brain dump. So a lot of people talk about using brain dumps in various ways, but for the purposes of our presentation here, I want to encourage you to use this specific type of brain dump, the ongoing brain dump, to really be able to hit that off switch of the mind swirl. Personally, when I switched from doing traditional brain dumps, which would only have short-term mind swirl calming effects for me, to doing an ongoing brain dump, it really made a big difference for me in my life. And in a matter of just a few weeks, I went from being overwhelmed to having calmed the mind swirl. So, What this ongoing brain dump means is that you will want to practice noticing when you're in the mind swirl and catching whatever that thought is. When you do this, then immediately write that thought down. So you find yourself reminded of, oh yeah, one of the bulbs in the bathroom light fixture is out. If you're not going to stop right there and change it on the spot, pull out your phone and in your digital capture spot, write down, change bathroom light bulb. Or maybe you're cooking dinner and you think, oops, I meant to text my friend today about that dog groomer person that she recommends. Again, pull out your phone, or if it's faster or easier, scribble it down on your kitchen whiteboard or pad of paper or whatever. Text friend about dog groomer. So see how this works? When you do this repeatedly and really start to cement this thought capturing habit, then the mind swirl stops and your mind can feel calm and focused and organized because you have a system working for you. And just to set a realistic expectation for yourself, when you first start doing this, give the process time to take hold. It's going to take a little bit for your brain to trust the system, but as you do it more and more and consistently, then your brain will quiet down and you'll just be in a rhythm about it. So when you first start, give it time and know that when it starts working, you'll know because your brain will be calmer and quieter, and a good indicator of where you are in the process of incorporating this into your life is if your brain is still noisy, that's no problem. It's just telling you that you have thoughts to capture. So don't make this mean anything or be hard on yourself about this if it's still happening as you're learning this new skill. Just take it as information that you need to write something down and then go do it. That's all. No judgment, nothing like that. Again, the more you do this and the more comprehensively you do this, the quieter and calmer your mind will become. Okay, so as we get close to the end of our presentation here, I just wanted to revisit our agenda for today's presentation. So first, we talked about what makes up an organized mind and what this means. Then, we talked about the calm and big problem of mind swirl. Next, we discussed the 3 main steps to creating an organized mind. And now I want to send you on your way with action steps. So, your action steps for starting to get this system for an organized mind incorporated into your life. And really, these follow the 3 main steps that we covered here today. So, the first step is that awareness step. The mantra, my brain is not a container. Make sure that you are making this mindset shift for yourself and no longer allowing container brain as an acceptable way of being. Remind yourself that there's a new and better way, and that better way is allowing your system to be your container brain and allowing your brain to do what it does best, like creating, analyzing, coming up with ideas, things like that. Your next action step is to set up your systems, so your capture system and your to-do list management system. So pick your one digital spot and a few key physical spots and get those set up. Then use that digital spot for your gathering and consolidation of your thoughts and information, and then the prioritization. Finally, once you have your system set up, begin practicing the habit of using an ongoing brain dump in your day-to-day life in conjunction with the system and the process that you set up in action step number 2. Now, I promised you a little more information about my free workshop, and here it is. It's called The Only To-Do List System You Need to Get Your Busy Life Under Control Today. So, if you want more learning goodness from what we talked about here today, and especially if you want to learn the details of setting up a prioritized to-do list management system, then definitely click the link to register for my free workshop. My free workshop will build upon what you've learned here and give you more information and details for getting your to-do list system under control. As it says on the slide here, in my workshop, in a little under an hour, we'll cover some common approaches to to-do lists that just don't work. We'll cover what to do with your to-do list that does work. And you'll also get to learn the exact system that I teach for to-do list management from my results creating program, Power Up Your Productivity. So again, click the link to get all the learning goodness for yourself. Thanks so much for being here and for taking the time to check out my presentation today. So I just want to wrap this up by saying that I appreciate you and your interest in my topic here, and I'll catch you in the next thing.